Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Catholic OCD podcast. Today in the studio, we have a special guest, Joseph Carrabbia. We're going to talk about aliens. You know, have they abducted you? They've abducted me. What's that all about? That's today's episode. Stay tuned. I hope you guys enjoy this. This is Joe Carrabbia, everybody. He is a theology teacher, and I've asked him to come on the show. We're talking about aliens and stuff like that. Basically, we've had some people. I gave people some opportunities to write some questions and to give us some ideas for the show. So we actually had two different people ask about aliens. So we figured, well, that must be a sign from ET that we need to talk about this. So first thing I want to do is I want to introduce Joe Carrabbia. There he is.
How are you?
Joe really likes when you refer to him as Yukon Cornelius, by the way, too, right?
Silver and gold.
Silver and gold. Silver and gold we do not have. But what we do have is this. Grow a long beard. So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? This is your first time on the show.
Yeah. You've been asking me to be on here for a long time.
Yeah. First time guest, long time listener.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been listening to it. You're good. I'm
real good.
Theology teacher, John F. Kennedy High School in Warren. Father, friend, foe.
So Joe has 5 kids.
Yeah.
Got a beautiful wife named Brooke.
Oh, yeah.
And let's be honest, she shot them kids out like semi-automatic. Like every year, you guys just popped out a kid.
Yeah. Well, I've never had one kid, so I don't know what that's like.
Oh, yeah, because you started off with twins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. We had, I think, 4 kids in like 26 months.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, you did some of your schooling for theology through Franciscan.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had a lot of kids, and I kind of put that on hold for a little bit. Yeah.
Like, hold this real quick.
Yeah. I'll come back to it later.
Yeah. So, This is 2 firsts on this show. First time that we've had Joe Carrabbia on. The first time I've wore a hat backwards. I went to go get cabinetry with my wife today for our basement kitchen. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna throw this on. Yeah. And why do you think I decided to wear the backwards hat? It's kind of 2 reasons.
Because you didn't do your hair this morning?
No. Well, that doesn't matter because when you wear the headphones, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it does. Okay.
All right. What Seinfeld episode do you think I watched last night?
The one with the really cool guy.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember?
Yeah.
Step off, George. Tony says, step off.
Is that the one with sandwiches?
Yeah.
He's like,
Tony. I made such good sandwiches.
Don't, Tony.
That and did you ever watch any of Cameron, what was it, Bartuzzi?
Bartuzzi, yeah.
Yeah.
Capturing Christianity.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
He always wears the backwards hat.
Does he?
He's like going through this whole thing right now of like deciding kind of like, honestly, like whether to be Catholic or not.
Do you think he's going to be Catholic? It's like you're watching like a show where you're like, what is going to happen here?
Yeah.
It's like he's leaving you in suspense.
It's like a soap opera.
Yeah.
I think that he has this weird thing where like he plugs in all this data to like a machine. I don't know what kind of machine it is. Yeah. It might be like that thing. Remember that robot from Pee-wee's Playhouse? And they give him the word of the day at the end? Yeah. So maybe it comes out and it just says, like, yeah, be Catholic. But basically, I think that a lot of it is hinging on, basically, if he's looking at, you know, the papacy as, like, this valid thing, then he thinks that he pretty much would have to convert. And I think that it sounds like he's leaning that way.
Yeah,
but I think he's doing a good thing, like taking your time. It's not just like changing, underwear.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a big deal. I watched him with he was on with Scott Hahn and on what
Pints with Aquinas. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting fellow.
All right, well, let's get down to aliens. Okay, so I had some questions about aliens, like could there be aliens that exist? Does the church have a stance on aliens? If aliens did exist, how would this work as far as salvation and everything like that? So let's get through that. So the first thing is, as Catholics, we should say that the Catholic Church doesn't necessarily have this 100% set in stone stance on aliens.
Correct.
There's a lot of open interpretation. Mm-hmm. But if there were to be aliens, some extraterrestrial life out there, then there are certain questions that have to arise. So what do we know for sure? We know that there is one God. We know that there's one God, and we know that there's heaven. So we know that in our world, the humanity fell because of original sin, and then therefore we needed redeemed. Mm-hmm. In our understanding, Jesus becomes human. He takes on human nature in order to redeem humanity. There definitely is a curse that the Bible talks about is given to all of creation because of humanity. So if there were aliens, would they be affected by Adam's fall? How would they be redeemed? Like, how would that work?
Yeah. No, I think that's the question, The fall affects all of creation, right? So if aliens were to exist, would they be would you include that in creation? They're part of creation, I guess, right? So the church doesn't really have a stance on it. It's an interesting, and like also the question is too, like would aliens? I mean, obviously, would they be rational creatures? Could they? Would you say that they're made in the image and likeness of God?
Yeah, because we could look at angels. So we do know humans are not the only creature out there that gets to spend eternity in worshiping God. We understand that there are the angels, and the angels are made before humanity.
Yeah.
The way that it works with angels do have a rational soul.
Correct.
And they have free will. Mm-hmm. But the way that it works with angels is angels had an immediate choice to be obedient to God or to reject God. Yeah. We know that 1/3 of the angels rejected God.
And their will is fixed.
Their will is fixed. So what does that mean? Tell us what that means.
That means that once they've had their testing, that their will is oriented towards that position, right? They don't have a like our will. We have this like journey of going back and forth. If obviously if you're believing in free will, right? Then when we reach the beatific vision, we've chosen the good, right? The angel's will would be fixed, so it would just once they know, because they're a higher intellect than us. Once they've garnered that information and they made that decision, there's no like going back. Our intellect is not as high as theirs, so we see more dimly than the angels do.
So basically, once Lucifer rejects God and he convinces the other third of the angels to do so, that's it. There's no redemption for those people.
Correct.
Their decision is made. And that's how ours is when we die. When we die, we will be like the angels, like, there is no, and some people have a bad understanding of purgatory. Like, oh, purgatory is where you go if you weren't really sure, and this is kind of where you have a second chance. No. When you die, you would have already have chosen God, or you would have rejected him. There is no changing your mind at that point. So with aliens, then, the question becomes, if aliens would have, if they were like us and they have a cognitive, a rational soul, then they would have to have free will. So if the aliens fell, how would they be redeemed? Like, would their redemption or would their fallen nature be connected to Adam's sin, and then therefore it could be redeemed through Christ, what he did on the cross? Mm-hmm. Or if they're different, if they're not made in the image and likeness of God like we are, then there would have to be another plan. And I think it's, Aquinas says it like Jesus did not have to become incarnate for redemption to happen. God could have did it another way, but this was the fitting way. This is the way that God saw it to be fitting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, correct. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting, it's speculative. It's all speculation. There's no clear teaching on it. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the reasons I don't believe that they exist. The reasons I don't believe that aliens exist is, I think, what's the number one reason people think that aliens exist? And I think that it's this idea of, like, it just makes sense. Think about it. All the galaxies out there, all the planets out there, there has to be, people say this, there has to be intelligent life out there. But if we are describing intelligent life as a cognitive, rational soul, what does this mean, a cognitive, rational soul? This is a very important thing. Aquinas basically describes three types of the soul. You want to take this? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's the vegetative soul.
Okay, so the vegetative soul is, because the word soul, like, I know...
Soul, anima.
Anima.
From Latin. That's what animation, right?
Right. So, like, if you draw a picture...
Yeah.
If you draw a picture and you're just looking at it, that's not animated. When you draw a ton of them and then you flip them, you see the animation. That's where the word soul comes from, this word of, like, it's animated.
It's the animated principle in the thing, right? So, yeah.
So what would be the vegetative soul? This is the lowest form, basically, of the soul.
Yeah, it's the lowest form. Plants have a vegetative soul, right? So they're able to grow and they're able to reproduce. So it's like the minimum base level functionality of a soul, right?
Yeah, they're alive.
Yeah.
They're
different than a rock.
They're different than a rock.
Yeah.
They would have life, but this life would be bios life. It's a biological life. So in that sense, we would say, they have a soul. It's a vegetative soul. The next thing is the umbrella of the sensitive soul.
Correct. Which would include, the animal soul, or some people talk about it as like sensation, like sensitive soul.
Yeah.
And then the rational soul. So, like, dogs would have a sensitive soul. They could do everything that plants can do. They can grow and reproduce, but they also have sense expression, right? And they have locomotion. They can move in a way that plants don't move.
So, in the idea of the sensitive soul, we're understanding that, so a human has a sensitive soul, an animal, a cat, a squirrel has a sensitive soul. We can both move.
Correct.
We can feel emotion.
Yeah.
Obviously, dogs get sad and they get happy. We would all believe this. All other creatures, birds, snakes, squirrels, spiders, dogs, cats, in their idea of sensitive soul, they would not have a rational
Correct.
soul. Only humans would have a rational cognitive soul. Correct. Explain that. What is a rational soul?
Well, I mean, it's the principle that that you're able to, like, for instance, like you could think in the abstract, right? Like you could think about justice, right? You can think abstract thoughts. You can think in a way that transcends just sense experience, right? And the lower faculties there. So I think that's typically the distinction that a lot of people make, right? That you can think in an abstract way.
And so when you look at this, a couple examples of this, a dog knows it likes food, right? It knows, like, oh, I like this treat, I don't like that treat. But a dog is never going to take this food over here and mix it with this food over here because this enhances its flavor. Squirrels know by instinct they're supposed to store up nuts for the winter. Mm-hmm. But a squirrel doesn't decide what religion to be. Squirrels don't pass down philosophy
Correct.
to each other. And really, when you think about it, like, no other species knows their birthday. They don't record history. And this is the really big question. How many species do we know that exist in the universe that have the ability to worship a god? Because common sense tells us, if by chaos, if just by chance we all grew and came into existence from the same form of matter, then it should be understood you should have, even if you're going to say the humans are the highest intellect species on Earth, there should be other species that maybe they can't create the internet, but they can, they could be a taxi driver. Maybe they can't become a doctor, but there's other basic jobs that they can have, and that they could pass down language and philosophy and religion to one another. It's impossible. Out of the millions and millions of species, it doesn't make any sense at all for there to only be one species that we know of in existence that has the ability to worship God. Yet, there is. Yeah. Why is that? Why is it that we are the only species to be able to do this? And you basically got two answers. Number one is this just came from, it's a 1 in a billion chance. This was just totally against the odds, and this is just how it had to happen by chaos. Or it is based on that the humans are the only people in creation that are made in the image and likeness of God, with the ability to know, to love, to serve, and to communicate with God. And that's why God did it. If you're looking at this from an atheistic point of view, then you have to say, like, yeah, this really doesn't make any sense, but this is how it is. And this argument, honestly, is one of the things that gives me philosophical proof and reasonable proof that God does exist. So, you got any thoughts on that?
I mean, excuse me.
Go ahead. Joe, you know what you have in common with a 6 foot box that goes 6 foot into the ground that people go in?
The cough.
You are coughing.
Coughing. I am. I had COVID. And I don't know. just
Like a month ago?
a couple weeks ago. Yeah, my lungs have been little off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm over here like sweating. I'm like, don't cough.
This truck.
It's like, that's all I'm thinking right now. I'm like, I don't even know what Nick said. I'm like,
Joe gives me these little signals. I'll see with these eyebrows,
yeah.
where he'll give me these signals like, "Hey, don't come to me right now because I'm about to cough." And it'll be like this.
Yeah, I'm really fighting it. You know.
So, anyways, that's our understanding with aliens. I don't believe that they exist. I'm not saying it's impossible. If they do, they're made up of matter, right? So,
yeah,
angels aren't, and this is where we can't just view that. Oh, aliens, maybe they are angels, because humans are made.
Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Humans are made from the matter in which God made the world. That's how all creation, dogs, cats, squirrels, humans, we are all made from the material world.
Yeah.
You know, God is spirit, and the angels are spirit.
Correct.
So we can't confuse aliens with angels, because one is a spirit creature and one is a material creature.
Correct.
This is why there is a fall of the angels, but it's totally different and not connected with our fall.
Yeah.
Except for the sense.
Well, it is tied to. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, except for the sense of in which they influence us. Is that what you were going to say? Like Satan influences us to do bad.
Correct. Yeah. They're roaming around like a roaring lion, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, they do play a role in that, as far as tempting and wanting to destroy us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but they fell because of their rebellion. The demons, the 1/3 of the angels, fell because of their rebellion. We fall because of our own. Yet we are influenced by Satan, who influenced humanity to do bad. So, if there were aliens, they would have to have their own fall, or if they did fall, it doesn't mean God had to redeem them. There might be no redemption for aliens. Hey, you fell, just like the demons.
yeah.
The demons, but
What and like what is it? Is it origin that or kind of in the tradition of origin when they talk about the incarnation? Like, what if man didn't fall, right? You know that conversation, right?
Yeah.
Would Christ have still come? And I think in the Orthodox tradition, I could be wrong, but I think that there is a view in the Eastern tradition that Christ would have came anyways, because he constitutes or recapitulates all of creation under his incarnation. Right, he brings it all back into the Father, and so Christ would have came whether there was a fall or not, which is I guess a different.
yeah, I also think when you get into origin and you get really into like universalism, which is origin kind of almost believe that God's grace is so great that at the end, like even Satan and the demons and all of the fallen humans would be redeemed. And this is obviously something that the church said, yeah, origin, you are great, but you're off on that.
Yeah.
You know, tied into this whole conversation about the unique position and the unique role that humanity has in being part of creation, this brings up another question of animals. I had somebody who wrote to me about animals, and basically, and this guy is a great guy, and he has he was in the war, and so he has he has a dog that basically helps him with his a therapy dog. And you have these connections with these animals, and it's hard sometimes for humans to understand or to be able to comprehend how these animals that we love don't go to heaven. What would you say the common view of the church is with that?
The church doesn't. Again, that would be getting, like the alien conversation, into speculative theology. Or the church doesn't necessarily have an official stance on whether whether animals go to heaven.
Whether your dog's an alien.
Whether my dog's an alien. Yeah, he might be. Most people within the theology camps, they follow Aquinas on this, where if you have a rational soul, there seems to be some, ability in your soul to think in the abstract that disconnects you from the material, and that rational soul actually will go on and live in heaven if you're saved, obviously. Where the animals don't, they have more of that sensitive, or you could say kind of maybe this is a bad way to put it, but like a material soul in a sense, where there's nothing that warrants them actually living in heaven. That's like one camp, the Aquinas camp. There's not like really any definitive teaching on it. I think that the middle ground that I've heard people talk about is that that if in the new Advent, in the new heaven and the new earth, that God that he redeems all of creation back to himself, right? So that animals could be in heaven, like a dog could be in heaven because he's part of creation, so that he redeems everything back to himself, but probably not your particular dog, right? Like my dog Zeppelin, probably not. I'm not going to see my Cavachon in heaven, but there might be a Cavachon in heaven. Maybe the form, the platonic
kind of
form.
platonic, yeah. That's
the platonic form of dog in heaven. So
the dogness of all dog.
Yeah,
you actually get there, and
because all the forms are in the mind of God, right? So that so there is a view there. So I think that's kind of like maybe a middle road that some people take. But there really isn't a definitive teaching on that. I know Pope Pius IX. I think it was Pope Pius IX. I'm like really shooting off the hip here. I'm like all these fact checks, like misquotes.
Yeah.
I think he really put the emphasis on like the human person and that distinction in the human person. But I don't think there's any definitive teaching where he claims that the animals aren't going.
We definitely would agree that Snoop Dogg could go to heaven.
Well, didn't he change it to Snoop Lion?
Oh, well then I don't know. Well then no dogs go. My opinion is this: Aquinas. So when you talk about like outside of our material intellect, I think that animals, they react merely on the needs of the body. Things are just their habits.
No.
And I think that, especially when you look at Thomas Aquinas's understanding of heaven as the beatific vision, the idea of us being able to look at God and to be able to take in the view, in the imagery of God, I think that he would really view this as being limited to the cognitive, rational soul.
Correct. There's definitely an emphasis on that, and I agree with Aquinas on that.
It just wouldn't be dogma.
Correct. But I have no problem with.
There's no dogma.
There's no
about the dogs.
No, correct. I knew where you were going with that one.
Yeah, but what about your dog's mother? That'd be your dog's mom.
Yeah, I would agree with Aquinas on that, but I don't have any problem with the idea of like that kind of Platonic idea of dog in heaven either. I don't think.
And what Joe means by that with the Platonic thing is, if you ever look at the picture, the painting of School of Athens, and you see Plato walking with Aristotle, you're going to see Aristotle's hands like this. He's very much focused on the tangible things on earth. And his teacher, Plato, would be pointing like this, because Plato's idea was that everything here on earth is just a shadow of the ultimate reality of this. So, example, any tree that you see, we see tons of trees, but somewhere out there above our reality is the tree of trees, the ultimate treeness.
That's very good in philosophy.
Yeah, but then that's so basically the idea is
talking about dogness and trees.
Yeah.
What is this?
So there's tons of dogs and squirrels, and there's tons of dogs and squirrels out there, but you're basically saying that there are people who have the view that maybe not necessarily your exact dog, but that there will be the representatives of like the highest dogness of dogness. And then this is where you hear this podcast and you're like, I just don't even want to believe in God anymore. You're like, these guys are so insane. You know what? We're going back to we're going back to whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is something to those ideas, right?
It is. And you know what? Your brain, it's like, honestly, it's like muscle.
Yeah.
If you lift weights and your arms never get sore, you're never going to get stronger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I didn't eat that fifth taco, my stomach would never get bigger. Yeah. I have to, put in the work.
Correct.
I have to stretch it. So
I like stretching my students' minds when I go, you guys can't think of non-being. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, think of nothing. Can you think of nothing? No.
It's a show about nothing.
It's a show about nothing.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank Joe Carrabbia for coming and coughing on the show. We really appreciate that. So if you guys are watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell, and send Joe some cough medicine if you get a chance. All right, guys, this was our show about aliens and dogs and everything in between. So thanks for watching. I'm your host, Nick Nolfi. This is the Catholic OCD Podcast.